Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro rolling out the red carpet here for hour number 2. Man, just hours away from 2020. This year has just flown by. Coming up, by the way, in hour number 3, we have one of the Raiders' most famous fans for over 25 years. The Violator will be joining us in hour number 3. Why he will not be attending Raiders games in Vegas. We have that. Also, Minty Betts from Wager Talk will be joining us in studio hour number 3 as well. But joining us in studio as he does every week, every Tuesday. Always love having this guy here. Does so many good things for a lot of good people. The minister himself, Stretch Sanders, joining us in studio. Stretch, thanks for being here. How are you, my friend?
Guys.
What's up, Stretch?
Thank you. How was your Christmas?
Oh, it was really good. Went back home, saw my grandma, saw my family, saw my dad after 8 years, and so it was a lot of good reunions.
You saw your dad after 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it take that long to see your dad?
Well, a lot of it was by choice. So
Yeah.
when we left Chicago, we were 16, and he didn't raise me and my brother. So when we got like 17, we decided that we did not want to see him until we was what we considered to be successful.
I got you.
So
that makes sense.
we just kind of every time we go back, and then when I ran for mayor this year, he introduced us to our siblings. 'Cause me and my brother was our father's secret children for our whole life.
Gotcha.
So at that point, I was like, you know what? We know his family.
That makes sense.
I was at peace with it. And
Well,
so,
I'm
you know
glad.
what,
I'm glad
let's rekindle.
I'm glad you were able to do that. That sounds
Yes.
okay. So I want to
That's
get
very cool.
every week we get into some very serious topics with you. Some of the things you say on the show I don't always agree with, but I respect your opinion, and we talk about some very serious issues here. You've said on this show before, and I disagree with it. I respect your opinion, but I disagree with it, that you do not feel that African Americans can be racist. So I want to ask you this question. There's this group that has been out now. They're called the Black Hebrew Israelites. One of the members of that group allegedly, because, you know, in the writings, the anti-Semitic writings and everything, he followed this group and he called himself a member of this group. He goes into the house of a rabbi with a machete, targeting Jewish people. You might have heard of this, wounding 5 or 6 people. He's an African American. If you're telling me it's not possible for African Americans to be racist, isn't it possible for African Americans to be anti-Semitic?
I think that it's possible for us to be anti-anybody, you know, and I think that if you're dealing with a Semitic people, and because some will argue and say that Africans are Semitic, and they say you can't be anti-something that you are, but I still think that you can still be of that same cloth. So if Africans are Semitic people and people who are Jewish are Semitic, and they're operating as far as trying to hurt that person because they're Jewish, then that can be a form of anti-Semitism. But I just think that the biggest thing is that act is an act of hatred, you know, and I don't in any way, shape, or form condone hatred.
And I'm not saying you do, and I never would insinuate that,
Mm-hmm.
but the point I'm trying to make is I don't care what the color of your skin is. You could be black, white, I don't care. I think anybody has the ability, sadly, to be racist or anti-Semitic. Now, what is the difference between racism and anti-Semitism? Well, to be honest with you, I think there's a lot of different differences there. I mean, you're looking at someone at what they look like, maybe their religion, and you want to hurt somebody just because they're different than you. I could look at the same thing as if you're white or black, and you look at someone at their skin color. They're not like you, so you show this hatred towards them. That's why we call it a hate crime. For example, if an African American attacks someone because they're white, that is a hate crime. If a white person attacks another white person because of their homosexuality, that is a hate crime. Or in this instance, this African American decided to specifically target Jewish people.
Right.
That is a hate crime.
To be homophobic, homophobia means that you dislike somebody just because they're gay, just because they're lesbian.
And this person dislikes somebody because of their religion.
Right. But that doesn't have that has nothing to do with racism though. So racism, to be racist, means you have prejudice plus power. I think the point I was trying to drive home and still is that white people have to understand, because when you say everybody can be racist, what it does is white people have the license at that point to say, well, just forget about slavery. We all been racist. And it's like, no, racism is a systemic issue. Racism is almost like a creation. Because of racism and white supremacy, you have black ghettos and brown ghettos. That was created by racism. we can be prejudiced, we can do hate crimes, we can be hateful, we can be mean-spirited, but we cannot be racist.
So I watched...
Now, somebody beating somebody up for walking down the street who's white, yes, that's prejudice because you did not know this person. You just solely saw that they were white and you attacked them. That's prejudice. Being prejudiced is just as bad as being racist. It's not a matter of what's
They're
worse.
both awful things.
But I think that we just have different views of that term. So people call in and they think I'm saying we can't be prejudiced. It's almost like the way you guys view the word racism is how I view the word prejudice. It's the same definition in both of our eyes, but we're using two different terms.
So are you kind of saying that because the machete-wielding person that killed those four...
Didn't kill.
I'm sorry, okay, attacked those four Hasidic Jews in New York City, and it was predicated on religion and not skin color, that it wasn't racist?
It probably was mostly because it really just depends. Because if you look at it like why they just came in on that, just like if there's a house full of gay people and they say 5 gay people attacked, out of all these houses you could attack, other white people
It's
in
a
a
hate
lot.
crime.
But if you got 3 houses and all 3 houses there's groups of 5 white people, but the house on the end you go in and you attack the house with the gay people, that would be more viewed as that was a hate crime against gay people. Because if you just say
this is a hate crime against Jews. There's no question about it.
No doubt.
Yeah.
So
we agree
but
on
being
that,
Jewish is not a race. Jewish is a religion.
It's a religion, correct. I agree with you. Well, let me ask you this, because you mentioned slavery a little bit. And I'm watching this Farrakhan video where he appeared years ago on the Jerry Springer show. And they're talking about race. And Farrakhan said that he believes that all white people should feel guilt slavery. And I'm going to look you in the eye right now. I'm going to tell you this. I feel zero guilt. And the reason why I feel zero guilt for slavery is because I know in my heart and I know factually I had zero to do with it, and I am not a hateful person, and I am not a racist. I also know that my parents are not racist people. They didn't raise me that way. They had nothing to do with slavery. So I resent the fact when I hear African Americans, not all, some, say that we all as white people should feel guilt for slavery when I had absolutely nothing to do with it. And I'll tell you why I feel that way. Mm-hmm. I'm Jewish. If I speak to someone that is from German descent, or if I went to Germany, I wouldn't tell all Germans that they should feel guilt for what happened in Nazi Germany and the killing of 6 or 7 million Jews. You know why I would say that? Because the person I'm talking to, I would hope, is not anti-Semitic and doesn't want to kill innocent Jews, and they had nothing to do with what happened in Nazi Germany. Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Well, I just want to backtrack real quick. I don't think do you think it was Jerry Springer or was it Donahue?
I apologize. It was Donahue.
Okay.
I apologize.
So what he said was, it was Phil Donahue, 1990. What he said was, white people feel a sense of guilt.
I don't.
I don't at all. He didn't say white people should guilt. He said feel a sense of guilt.
Well, he's wrong.
Speaking in general.
He's wrong.
Speaking in general, he's correct.
I don't feel that way. The masses of
white people, there's a guilt thing.
Why?
And what they fear is that if we ever come to power, we will do unto those they done to us. That's why, hear me out. That's why white people are, whenever we have our own thing.
But is that guilt or is that just fear?
It's guilt. Because what fuels that fear? Guilt, right? When you know something is going to come back to you, you're afraid. To be afraid means you have fear. So when you think about it, white people don't give any other group the same hard time they give us. If Hispanics would have said all lives matter, brown lives matter, they'd have stayed quiet. They don't go in Chinatown and say, why not all lives matter town? They don't go in Koreatown and say, why not have an all Korean town?
Hold on a second.
But whenever black people have our own, we're the only group that always has to get attacked.
But
why BET?
You're not the
why
only
this?
group. I disagree
I'm trying to tell
with
you.
And that being said, if Hispanics did say that all Hispanic lives matter, they wouldn't have had the president of the United States at the time backing them like African Americans.
What about
if
the
Hispanics
chant?
said Hispanic lives matter, no other group would have said anything. But whenever black people try to come together and do for self, it's always, not all, but some white people who feel threatened by that. And that threat is a guilty thing. Do I believe that every white person has guilt? No, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't have any guilt.
No, because I had nothing to do with slavery.
Every white person didn't, in today's time, nobody white owns slaves. So you don't have to feel guilty. But do you have a responsibility because you benefit off slavery? Absolutely. Every white person in this country as a whole is economically thriving off the backs of African people.
You're not gonna like what I'm gonna say here, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I am not for affirmative action, and hold on. Let me just explain. I am not for affirmative action. Here's why. Okay.
Explain what that looks like.
I want everyone to be treated as equals, and if you have a white person, for example, and I'm using affirmative action as an example of what you're talking about, why I'm against it. If you have a white person that has an A- grade point average, who has all the curriculum and wants to get into Harvard, for example, and then you have an African American that has a B- average, that white person should get into that school, not that African American. That's the way I feel. And if you want everyone to be treated equally, then you have to abide by those same rules.
But you also have to give
for all races.
But
if it's an Asian and a Hispanic,
but not all races suffer what African people suffered.
Are they
Black
suffering
people,
now?
Yes, we are.
In what way?
Black people are at the bottom because of slavery. Being enslaved, you have to understand, when you take a people and you bring them from a foreign land, we call ourselves migrants. We didn't migrate. To migrate means you come by choice. We came by force. They stripped us of our knowledge of self, love, God, and respect. After 400 years of that, then you give us 100 years of Jim Crow second citizenship. We've only been free 50 years.
Okay, but let's
King
focus
died in
on
68. We've only been free for 50 years.
Instead of speaking in general terms, let's focus on what I'm talking about right now. If you're an African American in the Clark County School District, what stops you from getting straight A's if you work hard than if you're a white person? You think a white person has a better chance of getting good grades in high school than an African American? Where's the evidence of that?
A white person has a better condition around them to produce excellence in education.
So why should a white person suffer from that because maybe they have better parents or a better upbringing? Why should that white kid who works just as hard as that African-American kid suffer and not get into that school because the other person is a different race? To me, that doesn't make any sense.
But it's not about different race, though. It's about the fact that black people in this country...
it's all about race.
Black people in this country, because of slavery, because of Jim Crow, think about it. In the 50s and the 60s, when welfare was really prominent in black households, they had in fine print that a black man couldn't even be in the home. So when you say white people have better parents, our parents have been broken up. Our parents have been divided. You have to have a two-parent coalition to produce a positive child.
In the African-American community, you know how many kids are born out of wedlock?
By choice.
Yeah, well, it's not a good
choice. But the choice was forced upon us. So even though it's a choice that we're making,
so the man has sex with a woman, doesn't own up to it, isn't a father figure, and you're saying it's not his fault? He bears no responsibility?
He bears.
How about,
everybody bears responsibility. What I'm saying
is, this goes for all races, and in a lot of the cases, the government actually compensates women for having kids out of wedlock, and they're compensated pretty well in most cases.
And in that specific sense,
and that's by design.
Yeah,
right.
They used to have apartment complexes that said it was an all woman only complex. No man could be with the woman. This was in the 90s in Florida. It's by design. When white people and black people, when white soldiers and black soldiers came home from the war, white soldiers offered the GI Bill. Black soldiers was not. Black soldiers wasn't even offering a bank loan. So when white soldiers start buying homes for their families, getting counseling and therapy from the war, those homes are still being passed down. You have families who still own their grandfather's property. We don't have that same opportunity. So when white people succeed, it's because economically, socially, politically, you've been set up in a position to succeed. We have not. So I don't believe in being favoritism, but I also believe that black people have to have reparations. Reparations in education, reparations financially, reparations socially and politically, so we can not necessarily try to compete against you, but so we can get ahead of ourselves, so we can get in the game and have some stake.
Let me just give out the number, and then I'm going to go to JD. I know JD wants to chime in on this. Let me just give out the number. if you want to be a part of this conversation, 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call, 702-257-5396. Minister Stretch Sanders joining us in studio. We're talking about race relations. We're talking about affirmative action. We're talking about the Black Hebrew Israelites. Isn't that a hate crime? Isn't that anti-Semitism? Isn't that racist? We're talking about that. And again, that number to call, 257-5396.
So I want to get back to the conversation about feeling guilty. I'm Caucasian, obviously. I'm from Iowa. I am a mix of Dutch, German, English, and Scottish. My family at no point ever, they came from Michigan. At no point ever did they ever own slavery? Did they ever own slaves, or were they involved in slavery? Now that being said, if I came from, say, South Carolina or North Carolina or Virginia or Alabama or one of those states where slavery was very prevalent, and my family did own slaves and did have a plantation, I would feel guilty about that. I 100% would. But I don't, because I was not directly involved in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the guilt, it's not, some of the guilt when Minister Farrakhan said, there's a guilty thing. Once again, it's not saying all white people should have guilt. What he's speaking in, what I agree with, is a lot of times our white family are so threatened. I remember I wear a shirt that say support black businesses, and people will say, who are white, why not support all businesses? Why does me being proud of my culture, my heritage, why does that threaten you?
I don't have a problem with that.
You don't go in any Hispanic neighborhood and say, why they say brown power?
I agree. That to me is fear to a degree.
It's very much so fear. And when we said Black Lives Matter, we never said no other life mattered. All we said was we're looking at history. We're not being prejudiced. Once again, prejudice is just for the fact.
But I'm sure
we're going off history.
But I'm sure
and based on that history, black lives have never mattered. So when I say my arm hurt, my elbow hurt, why are you coming and saying your back hurt when in fact your back didn't hurt now to my elbow hurt? And when I look at your back don't even hurt.
You brought up Black Lives Matter, and I do think the majority of people that are in that movement are in it for the right reasons. I do believe that. But I would hope that you would agree with me when you hear chants talking about members of Black Lives Matter saying fry them like bacon, talking about police officers. It's wrong. That is not the right way to go about things, and that is not the right way to develop a better relationship between law enforcement and African Americans. Can you at least give me that there are some members of Black Lives Matter? And as I said, most of them I think are doing it for the right reasons. I really do. And I'm not one of those people that say, stop saying Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. I'm not one of those people. I get where you're coming from, and I understand the hardships. I really believe I do. And some of the reasons why, but again, it was formed based on Ferguson, based on a false tale of hands up, don't shoot. Now, does that not mean that there are travesties that take place between law enforcement, African Americans, and minorities? Absolutely. I know that stuff happens. And sadly, there is a small minority of police officers that are racist that commit crime. There's no question about that. There's bad apples in every group. But there are members of Black Lives Matter that are in it, in my opinion, for the wrong reasons, and they say hateful things and violent things towards police officers. I would hope you wouldn't be for that.
Well, Dr. King said, he quoted Victor Hugo, and he said, wherever darkness is, crimes will be committed. And then he asked the question, who created that darkness? And I posed that question today. Who created that darkness? So when we hear people say, pigs like bacon, fry them in a pan, whatever it was.
Right.
Yes, you can say that's darkness, but who created that climate? 400 years, 500 years, 600 years of seeing us hung. Do you know over 1 million people from 1905 to 1940 were lynched on trees? So across the country. So
what does that have to do with law enforcement today, though?
What it has to do with is black people got to a point. The Black Lives Matter movement was at that boiling point where we said, I ain't taking this no more. I'm tired of us being oppressed. I'm tired of us being killed. Police officers were started as slave patrol. So the system of policing is very racist, and it derives out of slavery. And so black people who are awakened, who are enlightened, understand that this is the chickens coming home to roost. This is years of oppression in our community. So could the language have been better? Could the attitude could have been better? Depends on who you're talking to. But
you believe all these police officers are racist?
No, I believe that the system of policing is racist. There are officers who join the force in good intentions. I believe that, once again, you can have a racist institution and have those in that institution who may not be racist. You can have a capitalist institution and have those in an institution who are not capitalists. You can have a evil institution and those who are not evil in an institution. It can be by ignorance. It can be by just way of not really understanding. You're not ignorant enough where you do have knowledge, but you just don't really realize the role you play.
So is the government racist then too?
Of course.
So that being said, if police officers are racist, or not them and themselves, but the fact that they're police officers and they do what they do, if that is racist and the government is racist, what would you like to see happen? What's your ideal solution?
So my ideal solution is that black people, brown people, red people, and white people have to get to a point where we work in solidarity. White people have to understand that as our white family, us being your black family, you have to listen to us. And when we tell you that we're in pain, it's not for you to say, well, all communities are in pain, or we have the same opportunities when it's not true. You look at history, no other group on this country, on this soil, has been slaves but African people. No other group has endured the worst Holocaust in America than black people. So when we talk about our pain, we need white people to listen and to get that fear of us coming to power as it's going to be a threat towards you. It's never been about white people. Black people as a whole have never been violent. So when white people say, well, what I hear violence, I don't know why. That's your
Hold on
own
a second.
psyche.
What do you mean black
people have never, as a whole, committed any violence towards what we don't have a history of violence against white people.
Then why is it that if you
white people have a history of violence against us?
Okay, but you just said black people as a whole have never been violent. Then
towards white people.
Okay, well then what is your explanation for the fact that if you had to pick the one race, the majority race that are behind bars, it is African Americans? What is your explanation for that? Why is it that black on black crime is as high as it's ever been right now? Look at what is going on in Chicago. So if you're going to say that,
you missing what I'm saying.
Well, I'm just going by what you said.
You can't be. Black people have never committed a crime as a whole against white people. I said that, and then you say black on black crime. I said white people.
When I first heard you say that, that's not what you said.
People.
Maybe you're okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I would certainly say that there have been events that have taken place, murders, violent crimes, where African Americans have committed crimes against white people. That does happen. You wouldn't deny that, correct?
Of course. But I said whole. That's not as a whole. When I say as a whole, I'm talking about 400. We can break down 400 years of a track record of white people literally killing us for just being black. 50 years ago, if I would look you in your eye like I'm looking in your eye now, you can lynch me and get away with it. You don't have that same history of us doing that to you. So a lot of that is guilty. White people feel like
you really believe
afraid
that
if we ever, I'm telling you, it's a fact.
If I committed a crime against you right now and murdered you, you don't think anything would happen to me? You can't possibly believe that.
I'm not saying that. I'm talking about what I'm trying to give you an example.
He's saying 50 years ago.
Okay,
50 years
I
ago.
can't speak for that.
In a different situation.
All right.
And there's numerous situations of white mobs lynching our people. So what I'm saying is, I believe in the beloved community. I believe in us coming together. I believe in us ending racism. But we have to do it with honesty and truth.
I get what you're saying. We got to take a break, and I want to open up the phone lines because it's always entertaining when people call in. Some people agree, some people disagree. I want to open up the phone lines right now. We're joined by the minister, Stretch Sanders. 702-257-5396 is the number to call in. Again, if you want to be a part of this conversation, phone lines are open at 257-5396. Also, we're going to talk to Stretch about the homeless ordinance, and he was planning on shutting down Fremont Street. There's a change of plans now on MLK Day. We will talk to him about that and, of course, hate in America today, the rise of hate crimes. That and much more. Be back right after this. You're listening to The Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. So glad you could join us. Our in-studio guest is the minister, Stretch Sanders. By the way, check out our YouTube page. We are streaming live right now. The Vegas Take YouTube page, and you can see Stretch. He always dresses. I always like the way he dresses, but he's wearing a shirt today that says "Black men don't cheat." That's another statement I might disagree with a little bit. I think we all. I shouldn't say we all, but many people cheat of different races, different.
Wait, so if I'm a black man and I cheat, am I not a black man anymore? How does that work?
Have you ever cheated on a woman, Stretch? Be honest.
I have not.
Okay, well you're a good man.
I'm glad to hear that.
Before I got saved, I never had a girlfriend, and so me being promiscuous, it wasn't technically cheating. And then when I got saved, I was with one woman, and then I married him with one woman. So
I'm happy to hear that.
But the statement though, a lot of the statements when it says like black people don't X, Y, and Z, basically is to like there's a shirt that says black men raise their children, and those statements are so powerful because the narrative is that black men cheat like all black men. It's not true. And I think that, I like this shirt because it sends a positive message to black men that, if you are cheating, there's a movement that's trying to say, brother, it's okay to be faithful to your one woman. So
I'm happy to hear you say that. And something, getting into Barack Obama here for a second, because I didn't vote for Barack Obama, but I respect him a great deal. And the reason why I respect him has nothing to do with politics. It's the same thing I say about Donald Trump. The reason why I do not respect Donald Trump has nothing to do with politics. I respect Barack Obama a lot because he appears to me, at least, to be a very good husband, a very good father, a very good family man, very intelligent and articulate, and nobody gave him anything on a silver platter. He worked really hard to become, the president of the United States. I respect him a great deal for that. But my one criticism of Barack Obama, in my personal opinion, is that he did not help us in regards to race relations. I've always felt that way about Barack Obama. For example, in the Trayvon Martin situation, he said if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. I remember one of my biggest criticism of him in 8 years was the way he handled the Ferguson situation. We know that Michael Brown was a thug. We know that Michael Brown was a criminal. He had just committed a felony, and then he attacked the police officer. The evidence is overwhelming. It proves that there was no hands up, don't shoot. The narrative was completely false. And before Barack Obama had all that information, he sent members of his staff, including Eric Holder, if I'm not mistaken, down to Michael Brown's funeral. He didn't do anything for that police officer after it turned out that police officer was completely innocent, just doing his job, and that police officer's life has been changed forever. So that was my biggest issue with Barack Obama. I don't think he helped race relations in this country. What would you say to that?
I think that it's easy to say that Barack Obama didn't help with race relations, but, I mean, the country as a whole has never wanted to help with race relations, and Barack Obama getting in that seat, it was almost kind of like he had to play catch up.
You don't think Bernie Sanders? You're a Bernie Sanders.
Years.
You're a Bernie Sanders supporter. You don't think
Damage.
he's been a civil rights advocator his whole life? You don't think Bernie Sanders is the guy that's wanted to help race relations?
Yeah, but wanting to help and actually helping is two different things. I think that Barack Obama could want. You said he didn't help. That doesn't mean he didn't want to help. So
I didn't say he didn't want to.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
So just because Obama didn't doesn't mean that he did not have the desire to do so. I think there are plenty of people in the country who have the desire. But if you say this has never happened, people say, well, no, so-and-so is trying. Yeah, I'm not saying nobody's trying.
Did you think he handled?
Did you think never happened.
Okay, fair enough. I understand what you're saying, and I never insinuated that Obama didn't want to help race relations. I do think he did. I believe that.
Stretch, let me ask you this: we never really talked politics before, but you do support Bernie Sanders. Why have you not given your support to Deval Patrick or Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or any of those African American candidates? Why Bernie Sanders over them?
Well, to me, when I look at candidates, I look at those who have principles and policies that speak for black people. I think that Kamala and Cory Booker and the other gentlemen, I think they mean well. I think that Kamala, to me, is a little more, there's some disagreements. I think her mean well is debatable, and I'm not going to use this platform to put those grievances out.
Well, she's put a lot of African Americans in jail. I can tell you that.
She definitely has.
But I think that I just try to focus on those who are black, who are for our people.
Yep.
And what I look for is a candidate who's speaking on our interests. And I understand that not all skin folk are kinfolk. And I'm not saying that against Kamala or Cory, but that's my focus.
Well, I can appreciate that.
I look at those who have policies, who are for reparations, who are for affordable housing in the black community, those who are for helping
Bernie Sanders
to do for ourselves.
I agree with you, and you're right about that. Bernie Sanders, as far as policy making, his policies would certainly, as president, would certainly help the African American community. There's no question about that.
Is there anyone in the United States, it could be an athlete, entertainer, business person, businesswoman, for example, that's African American, who you would think would do very well if they ran for president of the United States, like an Oprah, for example?
Well, I would not suggest Oprah, because Oprah's in a different position. And so she's in a different position where, because she has the following and the support system that she has, if she speaks in the interest fully to black people, that she will lose a lot of her support. Because we live in a country where you just can't be black and proud and be in politics. You can't be black and proud and be in a position of power. I think she's very proud, but right now, that pride has to be shown a different way.
Sure.
When she runs for president, black people are going to demand that she speaks on reparations. We're going to demand that she be a voice for our community politically. And because of the support system that she has, Oprah did not become a millionaire by black people. She became a millionaire by the white support.
Yeah, for the most part.
So,
yep. I agree with that.
And so she would be in a different position. So I would look for somebody who's mostly from the activist background, who can afford to speak that truth to power. And that's what I like about Bernie Sanders, is that he's in that position, because he's an activist, and also because he's white. If a black man was talking like Bernie, he wouldn't have got as far as he got. Because Bernie is white, he used his privilege in the right way, and I think he could do some great things if he's selected as president.
He is the minister, Stretch Sanders. I did promise we would be getting to some of your phone calls. If you want to chime in, now's the time to do it. That number is 702-257-5396. Once again, that number is 257-5396. I will add this about Barack Obama. When he was president, food stamps were at an all-time high. Welfare was at an all-time high. That is certainly not a good thing, and I'm not putting all the responsibility on Barack Obama for that reason, but I think it is important to note that.
And I think that's actually a vicious cycle to get more Democratic votes.
Why don't we get to the phone calls? Again, that number, 257-5396. Let's go to Linda. Linda, you're on with Stretch. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning, Minister Stretch.
Good morning, Ms. Linda. How are you?
I'm good. Happy New Year. Yeah, I need to chime in. I just tuned in, so I might be not quite on point with what you guys are talking about previous to this. But regarding Barack Obama, I take very serious issue with the fact that he did not help African Americans in any way. I believe that he caused us a lot of harm. I heard you guys mention the Ferguson riots.
Yes.
You know, I hope everyone is aware that during the Ferguson riots, Obama actually increased the 1033 program, supplying military weapons to black communities. That's one of the issues. He also bombed Africa, destroyed Libya, killed Gaddafi. Talk about food stamps. He cut food stamps by, $8.7 billion. He cut Social Security, cost of living allowance to zero for 3 years. He signed NDAA 2012 into law, authorizing the detention of indefinite detention of American citizens. He did a lot of harm to the black community. So no, I do not support him or anyone like
Linda.
him.
Linda.
Yes.
You made some very valid points there. I want you to hang on the line, and I want Stretch to respond to that because I think Stretch will disagree with you. I tend to agree with you, Linda. I think Obama's a good man, but I agree with you. You very eloquently made your points. Stretch, I want you to respond to that.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say I disagree with her. I think that there are some disagreements. I think that my focus is this. I try not to criticize black people too much that don't do what we expect because I understand that you have to deal with the root, not the fruit. And Obama in the position that he was in, like I said, he was elected but also selected. And just because you have a black face in a high place does not mean that you're going to be Superman. Because at the end of the day, his counterparts, the system he's a part of, is as racist and is as bigot as the Ku Klux Klan. And so he only could do so much. Doesn't make it right. I think he's definitely worthy of criticism.
You know that a lot of people would take issue to that. You're saying that the government is similar to the Ku Klux Klan.
It's as racist as the Ku Klux Klan.
You really believe that? I'm sad to hear you say that because while there are racist people out there, you're telling me that you believe our government and the United States of America and the entities that run this country, you're making similarities to a group of people, if they had it their way, that would hang all Jews and African Americans. You realize that's a very serious thing that you're saying.
I realize that I understand how I'm saying it, and I realize that at the end of the day, every individual in the American government is racist? No. And I think that that's what you choose to hear. I think at the end of the day, I'm speaking generally, I'm speaking systemically. This country was founded off racism. So if something is founded off something, that means the foundation is racist.
Linda, go ahead and respond to that.
Unless you eradicate that foundation, it's not gonna just go away. So yes, the country is racist. But at the end of the day, there's also those who are within the country, the John Lewises, and the list goes on and on, who are freedom fighters, black, white, brown, red, and yellow,
and
who are trying to eradicate racism. But I understand that by me saying America is racist, it's not me being anti-America. I love America enough to criticize America. And when you can hold somebody accountable, that's love. If you got a booger in your nose and I don't tell you, I don't love you as a brother. But if I say, brother, you got something in your nose, that means that I love you enough to not have you walk around and embarrass yourself.
I certainly understand what you're saying, but if I have a booger in my nose, I hope you wouldn't compare me to David Duke or the Ku Klux Klan. Linda, go ahead and respond to that.
I think that where he said he would not, I don't know your exact words, but you said something like criticize the black man. I would hold him even more accountable because I'm black. And so, yeah, I have friends, that agree with Minister Stretch that we should not, criticize the brother. I disagree with that 100%. The brother did not behave like a brother. And I think, as Stretch said, not all skin folk are kinfolk. But Obama's definitely not kinfolk. But the point being is that because, in my opinion, I think it's the systemic racism in American domestic and foreign policy. It's not the individuals. It's in the policy. It's like in the legal system. Today, on the 26th, we saw a 70-year-old woman. The police went into her house without a warrant, a search warrant. They tased her 3 times, threw her to the ground, put their knee in her back, and they're not going to face any charges for that.
That's horrible.
You see, Ayanna Jones was murdered. They brought 7 years old. They broke in her house during a no-knock raid. The cops who killed her are back on duty.
Yeah, which is horrible.
So, yeah, there is systemic racism. I would not say it's any individual per
Linda,
se.
Linda.
But the policy, yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, go ahead, finish your thought, and we'll go ahead.
I think I pretty much did finish it, but
Uh-huh.
mostly just to emphasize
Yep.
that is where I believe we as black people are incorrect by saying, let's not criticize the
No,
brother.
you have to
The
look
Well,
at
brother
I would
was
say,
wrong.
well, my
He was
position.
wrong. He was way more wrong than Trump. He bombed more countries than Trump. He killed more people than Trump.
Well,
That's
my,
an interesting. It's an.
We're not saying, well, let's compare that.
Mhm.
No, black people don't talk about the countries that Obama bombed. They don't talk about the million black and brown people he killed in the Middle East and Africa because they don't want to criticize the brother.
Linda makes some valid points there, and thank you for the call, Linda. By the way, the number is 702-257-5396. Again, that number
if I could just respond really quick.
257-5396. Go ahead, Strick.
So I think that everyone is worthy of criticism. I'm not saying I'm criticizing. What I'm saying is, to me, I just don't have the energy to put in dealing with the fruit. I really deal with the root. And my whole position is that Obama was put in that position. And I agree. Obama did minimal for black people, and he has to be held accountable for that. But we also have to understand, too, the position that he was in and those who tied his hand behind his back. And so when you understand that, I don't care what position you get in, as long as you are part of a system that is predominantly ran by white supremacy, as a black person, you can only do so much. And that's locally, and that's also nationally. And so when we get in these positions and we don't see us saying black power and power to the people, you have to understand that they can't do that. If they do that, they can't be in that position. You cannot be pro-black and pro-country at the same time as an elected official. And so that's why activists have a little more leeway, because we can say things without being forced to get cut off from funding and get cut off from campaign support. But when you are under Barack Obama, the highest position in the land, he only can do so much. So I'm not saying I'm criticizing, but I also think, too, I would rather deal with what produced him and what caused him to not be what we wanted, opposed to spend time talking about he was harmful to the black community. There's so many things that was harmful to the black community.
Of course.
And Barack Obama is not one of those things.
I tend to, for the most part, agree with what you're saying. I want to talk a little bit more about what you thought in saying the word scared. Well, white people are scared. African Americans taking over and doing to white people what white people did to African Americans years ago with slavery. I certainly don't feel that way. I'm not scared, but I will say this: if I go into an extremely dangerous neighborhood, or let's call it the hood, where there's a lot of crime, and I'm obviously whiter than white, as you can see, and I'm walking around in a neighborhood like that has a high crime rate, and I'm walking by myself, I'm scared. And the reason why I'm scared is because I feel like, I could be singled out for the color of my skin. Does that make me racist? No, I don't think it makes me racist, but I certainly would be in fear of my safety. And there are neighborhoods across the country where I'm sure you would feel uncomfortable walking around by yourself. Maybe it's a community that you wouldn't feel safe. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, remember the movie The Bronx Tale?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like what I'm talking about here. Yes, I would be scared walking around in a neighborhood like that.
And when I say scared, I'm not speaking in that context. I mean, that's just natural. Anybody who's in a vulnerable position like that where danger can take place, you're going to be afraid.
Right.
I'm speaking in terms of whenever black people talk about doing for self, we got to keep in mind, J. Edgar Hoover said his goal, this is the director of the FBI, his goal was to eliminate, assassinate, and eradicate black people from having a black messiah. Mm-hmm. Because he feared that anybody that is willing enough to step out there courageously and organize us to come together, he feared that. My position is, why did he fear that? It's a guilty thing. I'm not saying every white person is guilty. Of course not, and you shouldn't be. Is every white person racist? Of course not. Is every institution? Yes. And there's numerous people who are trying to eradicate that.
I wouldn't say
but
that.
At the end of the day, we all have a responsibility, especially those who are white, to try to use your platform and your privilege to eliminate racism, because the country is in favor of you,
You think
not me.
every institution in this country is racist? Every institution?
Yes.
College, taxes,
Every
police,
government. Institution is pro-white.
Well,
and they're anti-black. There's nothing wrong with being pro. Being pro don't make you anti. But the way that proness is being described, it's being where they're only favoring one group and never looking at another group based on our color. So
I would argue the J. Edgar Hoover situation that you just discussed, I think that's more based on inferiority. I don't think that that's a guilt thing. I think that he just felt potentially inferior to African Americans under those circumstances.
A lot of
Now,
white people feel that way.
when Brian is in a neighborhood like he just described, and he is worried for his own safety, is that racism or is that self-preservation?
Once again, walking in the neighborhood, if I was Brian, I would feel the same way. So I think that.
But he's not being racist by feeling that way.
No, because at the end of the day, if Brian walks into a white, now Brian only feels that way in black neighborhoods and not white neighborhoods. There's white neighborhoods that's crime.
Absolutely.
We say black on black crime. Every community kills their own. You kill what you're around.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, what I say is, I'm speaking in terms when Minister Farrakhan was on Donahue and he said, he was talking about encouraging and enlightening and lifting up black people. And people was in the audience and said, well, it seems like you just want an all black society. Why don't you look at anybody else? He said, my ministry is focused on black people. Excuse me. And there's nothing wrong with that. Excuse me. I think that's, once again, you have to ask yourself, as a white person, why are you threatened? Why are you intimidated about black people and loving and encouraging each other? White people say, well, black on black crime. Okay, but you got black people out here who are trying to eliminate that. The reason why black on black crime exists is because there's a lack of self-love.
Do you think there's
campaign is black? I want for my brother, I want for myself. Mm-hmm. So because I'm so in love with Stretch, I want her campaign because I have self-love.
But
and
not every African American is like you.
But you have plenty of African Americans like me.
I didn't say there weren't plenty, but there are some that are not like that
because they don't have self-love and self-knowledge.
Yeah, well, I agree.
No, that's why. But then when we try to produce self-love and self-knowledge, we get told that we're prejudiced and that we're anti and why not all lives. Even the term Black Lives Matter was one of the most revolutionary self-loving terms. And out of nowhere, white people come, well, all lives matter. Why can't we love ourselves? Why can't we be pro-us?
No, I understand that so long as nobody is condoning violence or hate towards other groups. 257-5396.
Black people as a whole have never condoned violence towards another group.
Fry 'em like bacon in regards to police officers.
That's a small group of people.
But they are people. But they are people.
That's a small group.
But it's still a group.
I mean, it's
right.
It's a million plus.
But I said black people as a whole. I keep saying whole, and then you keep bringing up individuals.
Well, I mean,
I could name as a whole for white groups. You can't name as a whole for black people. I can name institutions. I can name programs. I can name numerous organizations of white people who have implemented violence in our communities. You can't do the same for black people.
There are always going to be violent groups and violent people out there.
Right. But what white people have to understand is you have to own it. Right. It can't always be a response of where there's always, and that's the problem I think the white community has, is that they do more you're listening to respond opposed to listening to understand.
Let's try to squeeze in a few phone calls here because we have some people who have been waiting patiently on hold at 257-5396. That number again, 702-257-5396. Let's go to Michael. Michael, you're on with the Minister Stretch Sanders. How are you?
Hey, what's up, Michael?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I just wanted to speak on the topic of the Black Hebrew Israelites.
Yes.
The Hebrew Israelites isn't a hate group. The Hebrew Israelites is a people that are direct bloodline descendants of the biblical Hebrew Israelites who just so happen to be black. If people would really do in-depth reading, researching, and studying of the Hebrew Israelites through biblical texts, they would understand that it's not a group of people that hate. There are people that hate inside the group, just like with KKK.
I agree.
KKK doesn't represent who the Christians are, but there are people inside Christianity that do hate other people, just as well as with the Hebrew Israelites.
And never did I say that this entire group of people want to kill innocent people or harm people, but I will say this. The man who walked into that rabbi's home with a machete certainly called himself one of the Black Hebrew Israelites, so you would have to say that there are members of these people that call themselves Black Hebrew Israelites that are hateful people that want to harm innocent people.
Oh, most definitely. There's hate in each and every group.
Right.
But to just say all Black Hebrew Israelites are a hate group, that's completely false.
Well, I think the KKK.
It's based on ignorance.
I think the KKK is a hate group. I don't think you would call me ignorant for that. That is a completely hatred group of people.
And I agree with Michael. I think that's something that's my whole position, is that I will never say all of anything. All white people aren't racist. All white people aren't everything. Any group, there's good and bad in anything, right? Hitler was a Christian. Dr. King was a Christian. Look at the work they produced.
Mm-hmm.
Osama bin Laden was a Muslim. Malcolm X was a Muslim. Look at the work they produced. So within any group, you're going to have your bad apples. And so the Hebrew Israelites, those individuals who did that act, was that a hate crime? Yes. But it has nothing to do with the masses of Hebrew Israelites. Just like the people don't realize the Ku Klux Klan, they call themselves a Christian organization.
Well, that's absurd.
That doesn't represent Christianity.
No, that's absurd. Let me ask you this, because we don't have much more time left here. We're approaching 2020. As I said, the last few years, hate crimes are on the rise. I do believe we are divided as a country more than we've ever been, certainly politically. Maybe racial divide. It's certainly probably the worst I've seen in my lifetime, and I'm 39 years old. I wasn't around during slavery, thank God. That would have been a tough time. But let me ask you this. We're now approaching...
You think it's the worst? Really?
Yes, I do.
I think the political divide is much worse than the racial divide at this point.
I think they're both very bad. Let's put it that way. But we only have 2 minutes left here. So let me... and yes, I do. I think they're both pretty bad. I don't want to say one's worse or better, but they're both bad. We only have about a minute here, so I want to give you an opportunity. What do you want to see happen here in 2020?
That's a broad statement. I want to see us get to a point where we can listen to learn. I want to see us get to a point where every race can understand that we all have been through something, but there are races who have been through worse. And you have to listen to that so you can understand why they say what they say, why they move what they move. I believe in the beloved community. I believe in the human family uniting, but not in a colorblind society, because I'm proud of my color. I don't want anybody to not see my color. But in a real, I love you for who you are society. That means race and gender. And I think the only way we can get to that is having honest conversations.
And that's what I think
agreeing
we
to
do.
disagree. And just being willing to learn enough to take what was put on the table and build off it. And so I'm excited for 2020. I think that we are in good times. The masses of people are waking up to the truth. And I'm just fortunate. I just thank God for being able to continue to put a message out of truth, justice, and equality.
Yeah, and I've always, and we only have about a minute here, but, you know, I've always said this about you. I know that your heart is in the right place and you care about people. And that is why we invite you on this show every week, because we're not always going to agree on everything, right? But I think it's important to have these types of, I don't know if you want to call them debates, discussions, what have you. And I agree with you. It is important to listen to one another, so long as we don't, you know, say things that are racist or ignorant or you know, things that just make no sense. But I want to thank you for coming on the show once again. The hour goes by so fast.
Yes, it does.
So I hope you have a fantastic New Year's Eve tonight. Please be safe out there, Stretch. Yes, that's right. It is New Year's Eve tonight, and always appreciate it when you take some time to come in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot, Stretch.
Yeah, appreciate
Absolutely.
it. All right, we're going to switch it up a little bit. This is going to be a lot of fun, right? The Violator, one of the most famous Raiders fans, is going to be coming up on our show next, and he's going to tell us why he does not plan on supporting the team anymore. The Violator coming up next on the Vegas Take.